Not just another Prodigy video. This one is ported. So 4¼ inch Springfield Prodigy. It's got an Atlas trigger in it. It's ported. RMR, Streamlight. Let's see how this one does. Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Sawtooth Tactical, and today I had the pleasure to shoot one of my favorite guns, but ported. So this is a Springfield Armory Prodigy, 4¼ inch. Really, the same gun that I have. And if you guys have been following the channel, you know how much I love the Prodigy. Of all of the pistols that I own, this one is my favorite to shoot. It's just a joy to shoot this gun. And I've always wondered about porting. You know, you put a comp or some ports on a gun and it has the potential to really help with the muzzle rise and just make it more flat shooting. And with the Prodigy, which is already a very flat shooting gun, that's something that I've, wondered about quite a bit. And so I had the opportunity today. A good friend that actually works at my local gun store loaned me this to do a video. It's his Prodigy, and the porting was actually done by another good friend of mine, the same guy that did the pin and weld on my 14½ inch. So, and he did a really good job, and we'll look at it closer in just a minute. But I learned some things from this today, and some of them were pretty surprising. But for one thing, yeah, it definitely wants to go fast. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed, and let's begin. This is a friend of mine's pistol, and a friend of mine did the porting. Same guy that did the pin and weld on my 14½ inch. He is very talented. She's fast. I've said many times that the Prodigy makes me feel very confident as a shooter. And so one of the things I learned today, one of the mistakes that I made, is that I went into this a little too confident. I was like, it's a Prodigy. It's a gun I already know, and it's ported. This is going to be like magic. And right off the bat, I missed a bunch of shots because I didn't get correct sight alignment, and I thought I could just shoot without, using the fundamentals and doing my part. This gun will work very well, but you still have to do your part. And it took me a minute to do my part today, which was funny. I noticed myself doing that, and it was funny to me. But I did get the hang of it. The Prodigy is a very good shooting gun. So now, for the shooting portion of this video, I actually took the Streamlight off of my M&P, put it on here because I wanted to compare the two. And I wanted to see, have as close of a comparison as possible. And putting a light on the end of your gun adds some weight, which helps with muzzle rise in itself. So I did that. I went out there. These two guns are set up very similar, but a little bit differently. They both have Atlas triggers in them. Mine has the medium flat face trigger. This one is the short flat face trigger. They both have red dots, although I have a Holosun and this one has a Trijicon RMR. And then mine has been sprung differently. And we're going to get into that in a little bit because I really have to give it to Skip's Guns, who I sent this to get the work done on it. It's actually pretty amazing what just changing the springs and a few other things on this gun can do for the recoil. But as far as the ports themselves, they really do make a big difference. Now, from the stock gun to the ported version, you can notice a big difference. From the ported version to my, upgraded resprung version, not as much of a difference as you might think. But it really was fun to shoot this. It does have a little bit of a different recoil impulse, less recoil, obviously. Quick word from this video's sponsor. I've been using Aura now for a couple of months. I know you guys have seen it in my videos if you've been watching. And it's a product and a service that I really actually believe in at this point. It has totally stopped me from getting spam calls. Now, data brokers are a real thing these days. Scammers, spammers, all this stuff. I've been trying to sell a pickup truck lately, and at first all I was getting was scammers. Well, Aura took care of that, and I'm not hearing from the scammers anymore. Unfortunately, I still haven't sold the truck, but I've got a lot of examples like that. In fact, the place where I work just recently got scammed, and we lost out on a whole day's worth of revenue. Well, Aura can stop things like that from happening. They search the entire internet for anywhere where your information is being sold to people, and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf, which takes care of your information being out there. It clears you up so that you stop getting spam calls, you stop getting scammers. There are people out there these days whose whole career is just scamming people out of their money by finding their information on the internet. And as sickening and as sad as that is, it's a reality. And for only $12 a month, you can stop them from being able to take advantage of you. If you use my link, which is the first link in the description, aura.com/sawtooth-tactical, you get to try it out free for 2 weeks. And then you can decide if it's something that you still want to stick with. But Aura is pretty confident that you'll stick with it, and that's why they give you that 2-week free trial. $12 a month after that is a really good deal for all of the different things that you get with Aura. I've been sticking with it for a few months. I'm really happy with it. I respect my privacy, and I respect yours. The way ports work, comps, any of those kinds of things, is by redirecting hot expanding gases. Now, when it comes to ports specifically, as the bullet is coming down the barrel, there are hot expanding gases behind it. And instead of all of those gases being released out of the muzzle end, some of them come up out of those ports. What that does is those gases shooting up act like a little bit of a jet and push the muzzle down. Normally, when you shoot around, you get muzzle rise. And that just has to do with, your arm being a fulcrum, basically, and the pressure coming out of the gun, it forces it up like this. If you have gases shooting up, that forces it back down, helping to control recoil and muzzle rise. And these ports are very effective at that. What it doesn't do is delete recoil. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. It is not magic, which I kind of went into this today thinking that it would be, which was my mistake. So I've had ARs before, specifically like this 11.5 inch, where when I bought it, it had an A2 birdcage flash hider on it, and I replaced it with a muzzle brake, and it practically deleted the recoil. Well, these ports don't delete recoil, but what they do is they lessen muzzle rise quite a bit, and they make the recoil impulse different, quicker. It comes back on target faster, which is a very cool thing. Now, this gun already comes back on target fast. One of the things that I love about it, mine, even before I did any modifications, before it even had an optic on it or a light, and it was just totally stock, just looking at the sights, the return to zero, the return to your sights being back on target, was better than any of my striker fired guns. And so I kind of fell in love with this gun right away. Then I sent it off, had a bunch of work done to it, EGW ignition kit, which is a lightened hammer. I got an 8-pound recoil spring and buffer. I've got a lighter main spring. Of course, got the Atlas trigger, which breaks at 2.4 pounds. This one doesn't have all of that internal stuff done to it, but it's got those ports. So which one recoils less? Well, I think the ported one does. The ports do make a big difference. There's no denying that. And I went into this today wondering if I should port mine. I've thought about it for a long time. Now, Skip's Guns, who did the work on mine, also offers what he calls the Plague Comp, which is a giant compensator in the front. I've been thinking about doing V8 porting for a while, just because I think it looks good also. And let's be honest, looks do matter. I think this is a good looking gun. And so I was really interested in trying this ported one. And I got to. And I really enjoyed it. How do you make an already really good gun, even better. You guys know my Prodigy is my favorite gun. Maybe I'm gonna have to port it too. We'll see. I think the Springfield Prodigy fits a really interesting place in the market. It's not a really high-end 2011 like an Atlas Gunworks or something. It's not even quite a staccato. But compared to a lot of the budget 2011s coming out, I think that it is better than a lot of those. Although I don't have very much experience with a lot of those, I'm kind of going off of what I've seen other people's opinions and experience are. But what I think that it is it's a great platform to modify and make into something really good. And that's what I did with mine, and I absolutely love it. And that's kind of what this one is too. They just took a different route. So again, it does have the same Atlas flat trigger. Although, not with the EGW kit, not tuned quite the same. The difference though, this trigger is actually more crisp than mine. It's got a little bit more take up, a little bit longer travel, and it's definitely heavier. I will do some trigger pull gauges in a minute. This one comes in at about 3.5 pounds, whereas mine comes in at about 2.5 pounds. But this one does have a little bit crisper of a break. The funny thing too about the Springfield Prodigy, when it comes to QC or quality control, the ambi safety on my friend's gun here is much more positive and just better than mine is. And they're the same gun. My ambi safety, if you see there, it's got a little bit of play when you're on fire. This one doesn't really. And that's a quality control thing. And you shouldn't really see quality control issues like that on a $1,300 gun, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not happy with my $1,300 gun. Actually, about $2,000 gun now with all the upgrades. I'm extremely happy with it. But it was just interesting to shoot another one because I've only had a sample size of one this whole time. And to see that certain things are better on another Prodigy. Things that should just be the same. So here we have them both. And I think that they're both very good looking guns. I do love the way that the Atlas trigger looks in this. Now this one was actually done up by another friend of mine who sold it to the friend that loaned it to me. And he took out all the internals, polished them, did the trigger work himself, and he did a very good job on it. So if we look at this trigger here, it is extremely crisp. It's got a great reset, and it feels fantastic. And then if you look at mine, a little bit less take up, much lighter break, doesn't feel quite as crisp as this one though. And mine has the full EGW works in it, the ignition kit, and then I've got a lightened, just all lightened springs in general. But let's do a little bit of a trigger pull gauge here real quick. So we'll do the new one first here. Oops. So we got 3 pounds on that pull, so that's a pretty nice light trigger. .6, so that's what I was getting earlier. Now let's see what my Prodigy does. .2. Do one more. 1.8. Yeah, so this thing is ridiculously light. It was 2.4 when I first got the work done, but I've put, a ton of rounds there since then, probably another 1,000. And so it's just getting even lighter, which is sweet. But my point in this video isn't really to compare these two, but it kind of is, because a lot of people with Prodigies are looking to do upgrades on them, which I fully support. I think that's one of the great things you can do with these guns. And maybe this video can help you decide what kind of upgrades to do. Does it make sense to do porting? Does it make sense to change out all your springs and do an EGW kit? Or to do both, which I think is the direction that I am leaning in. So when I go to rack mine, it does feel smoother than this one. And the only reason that I can come up with really for that, well, there's two things, is because I'm running an 8-pound recoil spring. And so it's just easier to move that slide. Also though, one issue people used to have with these Prodigies when they first come out is the disconnector in there is that the slide would get hung up on it. Now that does not happen with this one, but mine does have a ramp cut in the bottom of it now, and you can't even feel it go over that disconnector anymore. And I think that these things play into the way it shoots more than I maybe even quite realized. And now my own Prodigy, unported, just to compare. Now when I say that respringing this and all the other internal upgrades made more of a difference to how the gun shoots than I probably even realized before, is this. I thought that I was going to notice a night and day difference between a ported Prodigy and a non-ported Prodigy. And I didn't really. So I mostly shot this gun today, but I brought this one with me, and at one point I just put one 20-round mag through it because I wanted to see what the difference was. And the funny thing being, even though they're the same gun, this is the one that I'm used to. I'm used to this optic. I'm used to the way this gun feels, recoils, returns to zero. And I did actually shoot my own personal gun better. Now, was I a little bit warmed up by that point? Sure. But there's just something about your own gun that you put thousands of rounds through. But what I expected was that my gun was going to recoil more, and it didn't recoil significantly more. And what I attribute that to is the different springs and all the other stuff that went into it from Skip's guns. And so I really got to give Skip's a lot of props in this. So he has what he calls the Better Prodigy package. And part of what I paid for with that was a recoil reduction is what he calls it. And that's that 8-pound recoil spring and buffer. Like I said, it's got a lightened hammer, which that also makes it easier for the slide to go back. And then a ramp cut in the bottom of it so it doesn't get hung up on the disconnector. All of those things making the slide just reciprocate with less, friction against it actually translates to a very soft shooting gun. Now this will do a similar thing, different actually. I think the ports are more effective in combating muzzle rise, but the recoil of the gun itself actually feels a little bit more violent than this one does with all the different springs and EGW kit and stuff. And so while I thought that this video was going to be all about how the porting was just a magic ticket to a recoilless gun, what I found is that there are multiple ways that you can go about making your gun softer shooting. And what I really think I want to do now is take this gun with all the lighter springs and everything else, do the V8 porting, and see where that makes it end up. Because as anybody who's messed with muzzle devices on ARs and stuff knows, they can make a big difference when it comes to recoil, especially just felt recoil, muzzle rise, and that is what this porting does. But again, if you've tuned ARs and you know anything about buffers and springs, well, that also makes a big difference in how your gun feels. This one right here is a 3-prong flash hider on it, but it's got a mid-length gas system, and I've tuned the buffer and spring to be as ideal as it can be for the gas port diameter and all that, and it shoots softer than my 16-inch AR with a carbine length gas system and a big-ass muzzle brake on it. And so that's kind of what I found with these as well. This is not what I expected to find for this video, but I did, is that porting comps versus springing and tuning a gun can both get you where you want to go, but in two different ways to get there. So this is a good comparison today. My unported Prodigy is, you know, I got a recoil reduction done to it. It's got an 8-pound spring. It's got a little recoil buffer in there, but it's not ported. This one, I believe, has the factory springs and everything in it, but it is ported. Which one is softer shooting? I'm trying to figure that out right now. Don't get me wrong, I think that the porting is definitely worth it, and it's freaking sweet. And it just looks cool. Now, it's a little dirty because I was shooting it today, but when it's all cleaned up, God, it looks super slick. I mean, this gun looks damn good. I love the red trigger. I love the aesthetic of an RMR, although I didn't notice until right before filming this footage here at the studio that this RMR is loose. Which makes me feel a little bit better about the shots that I missed, because I always feel like I practically can't miss with my Prodigy. And I was a little bit surprised today how many shots I did miss, until I got here and realized that this optic isn't quite tight. Now, that's an issue that I have had with mine as well. In fact, if you guys might remember when I was doing the 1,000-round review and all the stuff leading up to that, that happened multiple times until I used Vibratight instead of Loctite. And now I haven't had that issue since for the last probably about another 1,000 rounds. But that is, I think, an issue with the Prodigy, with this AOS optic system, is that the plate itself likes to come loose. And I believe, well, I know that it has on this gun. Now, I'm not going to use that as an excuse for my poor shooting. I have good days and I have bad days. But it makes me feel a little bit better about myself. Either way, one other thing I learned about this is that I don't just have a fluke Prodigy that works really well, because a lot of people seem to still think that this is a gun that doesn't run. And I know that when it first came out, that yes, a lot of the first gen guns had issues. I got a Prodigy that's been pretty much flawless, and I've put thousands of rounds through it. Well, today I had a chance to shoot another 4¼ inch Prodigy, and it didn't have a single hiccup. It ran perfectly. And I didn't take this gun apart and oil it or do anything. A friend of mine loaned it to me, and I just took it to the range as is. Now, he's a gun guy. I'm sure he takes care of his gun. It was super clean. So, you know, it is what it is. With 1911s, you have to take care of them. They're not Glocks. It is what it is. But this gun ran perfectly, just like mine does. And so it tells me this. If you're interested in a Prodigy, get a damn Prodigy. These guns are awesome. You know, yeah, it's not a staccato, but it's also not a T-sauce. These things, I think, for the money, are a really, really good value. And it's a great gun to do upgrades, to modify, and to make it into something, for one, that's unique, that's totally yours, because you could do whatever you want to it. You know, this one's got the toolless guide rod in it. You know, this gave me some ideas for my own. I'm going to put a toolless guide rod in mine. I might do porting on mine. But I'm also really happy with the modifications I've already done. The lightened springs and the EGW kit make this thing feel like a very high-end pistol. And that's the thing with the Prodigy. For, I think now, less than $1,300, closer to 11 or 12, you can get one of these base model. And if you were budgeting a staccato or something, well, then you still have money left over to, change out the internals, or to do porting, to add an optic, a light, to put thousands of rounds through it. And to me, that's a pretty sweet deal. So I'm just not one to just follow trends, and because people bash on something, think it's bad. I have my own personal experience now with 2 of these Prodigies, and I think that they're absolutely fantastic guns. And I also know that Springfield has fixed the issues that the earlier ones had when it was released. And I'm pretty sure that everyone that's buying them now has guns that run. One thing about the ported Prodigy, she likes to go fast. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. I definitely want to thank my friend. I don't know if he wants me to mention his name in the video, but he works at my local gun store, Guffey's Gun and Pawn. And I always want to shout those guys out, but I really, really appreciate you loaning me this Prodigy. Shooting a Prodigy is always a good day, and shooting a comped Prodigy is an even better day. This thing just wants to go fast, and I'm sure if I had it for longer and had more time to get a feel for it, I could probably shoot it even better than my own one, just because those comps, they do really make a big difference. This thing is sweet. So thank you for loaning it to me for this video. I really, really appreciate it. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you guys have a ported or a comped Prodigy or any 2011 for that matter. And let me know your experience with it. How much of a difference has it made for you? What other kind of modifications have you made? And how much of a difference has that made on your Prodigy or other 2011? I would love to know. I try to answer as many comments as I possibly can. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. From Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.